Chapter 1. Sold to the Alpha. I always loved early mornings in the garage. The smell of oil and steel, the quiet hum of the desert wind brushing against the rusted doors. It was my peace. I wiped sweat off my forehead, smearing grease across my cheek, and leaned back to admire my work. The Harley's engine purred beneath my fingers, a deep, beautiful sound only a biker could appreciate. "Perfect," I whispered, feeling a small smile on my lips. My dog-eared phone buzzed against the workbench. Liam's name flashed across the cracked screen. "Coffee later? Need to talk." I chuckled. That was Liam, my only real friend in this dusty little town. I was about to text him back when a low rumble made my heart jump. I turned my head and frowned at the black SUVs pulling into the yard. They rolled in like silent predators, dark windows reflecting the morning sun. Something in my chest tightened. I didn't have any pickups or repairs planned for today. I dropped the wrench, wiped my hands on my jeans, and stepped out into the open. I watched as 5 men got out, big, built, with tattoos peeking from under their leather jackets. Their eyes scanned the place until they landed on me. One of them, with short blonde hair and a scar slicing down his cheek, walked forward. "Reese Carter." His voice was deep and cold. My stomach twisted. "Yeah? What's this about?" He didn't answer. He looked back at the others and nodded. 2 more men moved toward me. I stepped back, feeling my pulse spike. "Hold on. Who the hell are you people?" They didn't reply. The blonde man sighed like he was tired of my questions. "Your stepfather, would you be in better position to answer that?" My chest went hollow. For a second, I couldn't breathe. What did you just say?" "He owed a debt. He sold you to settle it." "No," I shook my head hard. "That's not possible. I haven't spoken to him in years." "You're lying." The blonde man's gaze softened for half a second before splitting into the cold mask again. "You're coming with us." "Like hell I am," I snapped, backing up toward my bike. I had a wrench in my back pocket, my only weapon. My fingers fumbled for it, but before I could pull it out, one of them grabbed my wrist. He twisted it behind my back, forcing me to drop the wrench. Pain shot through my shoulder. "Let me go," I screamed, kicking out. My boot slammed into someone's shin. He grunted and slapped me across the face. Stars burst in my vision. My knees buckled, but the man holding me didn't let me fall. "Careful with her," the blonde man ordered. "She's worth more unbroken." I spat blood onto the dusty ground. "Worth? Who the hell do you think you are?" The man didn't answer. He just nodded to the others. One grabbed my legs, and before I could scream again, they hauled me toward the SUV. I thrashed, kicked, bit down on someone's arm, tasting blood. But there were too many of them. They shoved me into the back seat and slammed the door shut. My chest heaved as I tried to gather my breath. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I pressed my forehead to the window, staring at my garage fading into the distance. My garage. My life. Gone in seconds. Liam. They drove in silence. The man beside me smelled like leather and earth. His hair was black, tied back in a short ponytail, and his jaw was strong with dark stubble. I could feel his gaze on me, even though I refused to meet it. "Who are you people?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Where are you taking me?" He didn't answer at first. I turned my head and finally looked at him. His eyes were a strange golden color, so bright they almost glowed. Something inside me shifted when I met his gaze. My chest tightened painfully, and a wave of warmth spread through me. "What the hell was that?" He stared at me with an unreadable expression. "You're being taken to the Alpha." "Alpha?" I frowned. "Like some cult leader? Mafia boss?" I don't care who he is. I'm not property. He didn't respond. He just looked out the window, his jaw clenching. I could see the faint scar running along his temple, hidden under his hair. Everything about him screamed danger, but there was also something protective. I hated that I felt it. I hated that something in me didn't want to look away from him. Hours passed before the SUV finally turned onto a long dirt road. The sun was dipping below the horizon, bleeding gold and orange across the sky. My hands trembled in my lap, and I clenched them into fists, nails digging into my palms until they burned. The car rolled to a stop in front of massive wrought iron gates. Beyond them stood a sprawling mansion, dark and imposing against the evening sky. Bikers moved around the courtyard, some repairing bikes, others sparring shirtless with knives glinting in the last rays of sunlight. Wolves padded between them, their eyes reflecting the headlights like liquid gold. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just some biker gang. It was something else. Something ancient and terrifying. And why did they have wolves as pets? The guards pulled me out roughly. My legs felt weak under me, but I forced them to work. I lifted my chin, refusing to let them see my fear. "Bring her," the blonde man said. The one with golden eyes fell and stepped behind me. I could feel his gaze burning into my back. They led me up stone steps and into the mansion. It smelled like leather, smoke, and cedarwood. The air felt heavy, filled with something strangely comforting. They stopped in front of a massive set of double doors. The blonde man knocked once before pushing them open. "Alpha," he called softly. "We brought her." I was shoved forward, stumbling into a room filled with shadows. My eyes adjusted slowly, sweeping over the leather chairs, the bookshelves, the giant windows showing the last light of sunset. Then I saw him. He sat behind a dark oak desk, a massive man with broad shoulders, black hair cut short, and an unreadable expression carved into stone. Tattoos peeked out from under his black t-shirt, curling up his neck. His eyes lifted, meeting mine. Amber. They glowed faintly in the dim light, pinning me where I stood. A shiver ran down my spine, fear and something else crawling up my chest. For a moment, no one spoke, and the world seemed to stop. My heart thumped so loud it echoed in my ears. His gaze raked over me slowly, like he was memorizing every inch. Then his lips parted, and his voice rolled out, deep and rough like thunder rumbling over the desert. "You're finally here." Chapter 2: The Cold Alpha. His words hung heavy in the room. "You're finally here." I swallowed hard, my mouth dry, but my eyes couldn't leave his. Amber and sharp, they seemed to glow from within, like fire trapped in dark glass. He didn't move from behind the desk. Just sat there, staring at me like I was some creature he dragged in from the dirt. The blonde man let go of my arm and stepped back. Silence pressed against my ears until I couldn't stand it anymore. "Who are you?" I rasped, my voice trembling despite how hard I tried to keep it steady. He raised a brow, leaning back in his chair. The leather creaked under his broad shoulders. "You don't know who I am?" "Should I?" I snapped back, lifting my chin. I didn't care if my legs shook. I wouldn't bow to the stranger. Something flickered in his eyes, an amused glint quickly snuffed out by cold indifference. He stood up slowly. My breath caught when I realized how tall he was. The black t-shirt clung to his chest, outlining every hard muscle. Tattoos curled up his arms and neck, dark and intricate. He walked around the desk with slow, heavy steps until he stood in front of me. The scent of him hit me first, smoke, pine, and something raw that made my stomach twist. "I'm Jaxon Wolfe," he said softly, though his voice was anything but gentle. Alpha of the Moon Riders. My chest tightened painfully. Alpha, like the man in the car said. What did that mean? What do you want from me? I whispered. His gaze raked over me, slow and assessing, like he was looking for flaws. Your stepfather owed me a debt. Instead of paying, he gave me you. I swallowed down the bile rising in my throat. But I'm not property. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Here, you are. My heart hammered so loud it almost drowned out his words. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him to go to hell, but my voice refused to come out. All I could do was glare at him, hoping he'd see the fight in my eyes and know I wasn't giving up. He stepped closer, and I forced myself not to flinch. His eyes darkened slightly, flickering to my lips before settling back on my eyes. You will stay here, he said, his voice like gravel scraping against steel. You will follow the rules. You will give me what I want, and in return, you will be protected. Give you what you want? I echoed, confused. He didn't blink. An heir. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. An heir? You mean a child? Yes. His eyes were hard as iron. Nothing more. My chest burned with rage and humiliation. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. So that's it? You're just going to use me and then what? Throw me away. His lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. That depends on you. I shook my head, fighting the tears burning my eyes. You can't just force me to. I can, he cut in sharply. And I will if I have to. For a second, everything inside me froze. The room felt smaller, the shadows deeper. His presence swallowed all the air, leaving me dizzy. He turned away, walking back to his desk. Blaze will show you to your room. You start training tomorrow. Training? I croaked. To prepare you for your role here, he said without looking at me. You are weak and unprepared. I can't have that. I wanted to scream, to grab something heavy and smash it into his skull. But I didn't move. I just stood there, shaking, staring at the back of the man who had just torn my life apart with so few words. No, that blame would go to my stepfather. I was so stupid for thinking I could escape him by running away. The golden-eyed man from the SUV stepped forward. Blaze, I suppose. He gestured for me to follow him. My feet felt heavy, like blocks of cement, but I forced them to move. As I turned to leave, Jaxon spoke again, his voice low and final. Reese. I stopped, my shoulders stiff. Don't think about running, he said softly, but there was no warmth in his tone. Don't think about defying me. You're only here for one reason. Cross me, and you'll regret it. My throat tightened, but I didn't look back. If I did, I might break, and I couldn't afford that. Not here. Not now. I walked out of his office with my heart thudding in my chest, each beat echoing with the same thought. I had just been claimed by the coldest man I'd ever met, and I had no idea how I would survive him. Chapter 3. The Bond Awakens. Days passed in a blur of confusion and pain. Jaxon had taken me, rough and mechanical, like I wasn't a human with emotions and feelings, just a tool to be used. My body felt strange, like something inside me was shifting. I woke up each morning with nausea rolling through my stomach, and my chest ached with a dull, constant throb. My mood swung like a broken gate in the desert wind. One moment I wanted to scream, the next I wanted to curl up and cry until there was nothing left inside me. I tried to hide it from everyone. From Blaze, who watched me silently each day as I trained with Kara and Caleb, the two warriors Jaxon had assigned to me. From Mara, the chef who offered small smiles whenever she saw me in the kitchen. And most of all, from Jaxon. He hadn't spoken to me since that first night. He'd pass by in the halls without so much as a glance, his heavy boots echoing against the wooden floors. But each time he walked past, something in my chest tightened, a warmth blooming under my ribs I didn't understand. One evening, after a long day of training, I collapsed on my bed, sweaty and exhausted. My stomach twisted again, sharp and sudden, and I ran to the bathroom, dropping to my knees in front of the toilet. I dry-heaved until tears streamed down my face. My hands shook as I wiped my mouth. What is happening to me? Later, while sitting by the window, staring out at the moonlit courtyard, Doc Nina came to check on me. Her gentle hands pressed against my stomach as she frowned in thought. "When was your last cycle?" she asked softly. My heart skipped. I tried to think back, but everything felt blurry. I don't remember." She looked at me, her eyes sad but warm. "I need to run some tests. I'll come by in the morning." That night, sleep refused to come. My mind kept replaying everything Jaxon had said about wanting an heir, about me being nothing more than a means to an end. But deep inside, another feeling burned, something warm and terrifying. That pull I felt each time he was near, it wasn't just fear or anger. It was something deeper, something I couldn't name. I woke up early the next day, nausea already bubbling in my throat. Doc Nina came in quietly, took my blood, and left without a word. I paced the room for hours, staring at the walls, trying to calm my racing heart. By afternoon, she returned. Her eyes were gentle as she handed me a small cup of tea. "You're pregnant," she said softly. The words crashed into me like a tidal wave. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the edge of the bed to steady myself. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. Pregnant. I was going to have a child. His child. My hand trembled as I pressed it against my stomach. I didn't know whether to smile or scream. The thought of carrying his baby filled me with fear, but also hope. Maybe this child would change him. Maybe it would make him see me as more than just a debt paid. That night, I gathered all my courage and went to his office. My hand shook as I knocked. There was no answer, but I pushed the door open anyway. The room smelled like leather and pine, and the fireplace burned low, casting shadows across the stone walls. Jaxon sat at his desk, papers scattered before him. His dark hair was tousled, and his amber eyes flicked up to me, unreadable. "What is it?" he asked coldly. I swallowed hard and stepped inside. I need to talk to you." He raised a brow, but said nothing, waiting. My heart hammered so loud I was sure he could hear it. I'm pregnant," I whispered, staring down at my hands. "It's yours." Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I forced myself to look up. His face was blank, his eyes dark and distant. "I thought you should know," I said, my voice breaking. "I thought, maybe this would mean something to you." He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms over his chest. "It means you're doing what you're here for." His words sliced through me like a blade. My chest burned, and I bit my lip to keep the sob down. I turned away quickly, blinking back tears as I left the room. My hands trembled as I closed the door behind me. I needed air. I needed to breathe. I walked down the hallway in a daze, my feet carrying me toward the balcony overlooking the courtyard. The moon was full and bright, casting silver light over everything. I leaned against the railing, pressing a hand to my stomach. "I'll protect you," I whispered to the baby growing inside me. "Even if he won't." Voices drifted up from below. I froze, peeking through the gaps in the railing. Jaxon stood with Felix Cross, Someone who I didn't understand but seemed as important as Blaze, near the garage, their faces shadowed by the dim lights. "She's pregnant already?" Felix asked, his voice low and mocking. "Yes," Jaxon replied flatly. Felix chuckled. "Fast work, Alpha. So what will you do with her after the pup is born?" "Keep her as a bed warmer." My breath caught in my chest, heart slamming painfully against my ribs. I strained to hear Jackson's reply. "She'll be sold," Jaxon said without emotion. "Once the child is weaned, she's of no use to me." Felix laughed softly, cold as always. Their voices faded as they walked away, but my world had already shattered. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor. I pressed both hands to my stomach, feeling the tiny life growing within me. He was going to sell me. Everything I had tried to believe about him, that there was a heart beneath the cold, crumbled to ash. My chest heaved with silent sobs as the truth sank in. He would never see me as anything but a tool. Wiping my tears roughly, I forced myself to stand. My legs trembled under me, but I clenched my fists tight. If he thought he could use me and throw me away, he was wrong. I wouldn't stay here to be sold like cattle. I wouldn't let my child grow up with a father who saw people as property. My eyes burned with new resolve as I stared out into the dark desert beyond the gates. I had to escape. Chapter 4. Running Away. The night was silent except for the distant howl of a wolf echoing across the desert. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the darkness outside my window. My heart thumped with fear and determination. I had to leave. I pressed a hand to my stomach, feeling the faint flutter of life within me. Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them away. Crying wouldn't help me now. I needed to be strong, for my baby and for myself. I packed quietly, shoving only what I needed into a small leather backpack, a water bottle, a few protein bars I'd hidden from training meals, a flashlight, and a hunting knife I had stolen from the kitchen days ago. My hands shook as I tied my hair back and pulled on my old ripped jeans and black hoodie. The smell of grease and metal still clung to it, a piece of my old life I couldn't let go of. My chest tightened painfully as memories flooded my mind. The smell of oil and dust in my garage, Liam's loud laughter echoing off the walls, my little cot in the back room where I fell asleep to the sound of engines cooling. A life that was mine. A life that felt so far away now. I closed my eyes, and another memory surfaced, one that made my stomach twist. I was 9, living with a foster family in El Paso. The father was kind at first, then one night he came into my room reeking of beer, his rough hands grabbing at my thin shoulders. I fought back, clawing and biting until he threw me against the wall and called me worthless. That was the night I learned that people could hurt you and call it love. That was the night I learned to run. And I would run again. I slipped out of the room, careful not to let the door creak. The hallway was dark and empty. My bare feet padded silently across the cold wooden floors as I made my way to the back staircase. I pressed myself against the wall as Blaze walked past in the main corridor, his golden eyes scanning the shadows. My breath caught, but he didn't see me. When he turned the corner, I exhaled shakily and continued down. The kitchen was empty. I moved quickly, pushing open the back door. The cold desert air hit my face, making me shiver. I stepped out, closing the door softly behind me. The courtyard was quiet. Wolves slept near the stone walls, their ears twitching as they dreamed. I stuck to the shadows, moving between the parked bikes and old crates, until I reached the far gate. I knelt and pulled out the lockpick Liam gave me for my 19th birthday. For emergencies, he joked. I never thought I'd use it to escape from a place like this. My fingers moved quickly despite trembling. The lock clicked open, and I pushed the gate just enough to slip through. I was free. But the world beyond was dark and wide and dangerous. My breath misted in front of me as I started walking. The desert stretched out for miles, bathed in silver moonlight. Cold wind bit into my skin, but I kept moving, clutching my backpack straps tight. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't stay. Third POV. Back in the mansion, Jaxon stood by his office window, staring out at the night. Something cold and sharp twisted in his chest, though he didn't understand why. He turned away, annoyed at the emptiness pressing against his ribs. "Alpha," Felix's voice came from the door. "She's gone." Jackson's head snapped up, his amber eyes glowing faintly in the dark room. "What did you say?" Felix shifted uncomfortably. "Reese. She's escaped." Silence exploded in the room like thunder. The papers on his desk fluttered in the cold breeze as Jackson's rage filled the space. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Without a word, he stormed past Felix, his heavy boots echoing down the hallway. "She won't get far," Felix called after him with a smirk. "It's the desert. She'll die out there alone." But Jaxon didn't reply. His mind burned with images of Reese, her storm gray eyes filled with defiance, her trembling hands pressed to her belly, her scent lingering in every room she touched. Fury and something darker clawed at his chest as he barked orders to his men. "Find her," he growled, his voice sharp as broken glass. "Bring her back alive." Reese's POV. Meanwhile, I stumbled across the dunes, my feet sinking into the cold sand. Tears blurred my vision, but I kept going, one step after another. The moon lit my path, casting long shadows behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I did, I might turn around, and there was nothing left for me there except chains. But after an hour of walking, my legs gave out. I sank to my knees, clutching my stomach as nausea rolled through me. The wind howled around me, lifting my hair and chilling my bones. I looked back once, just for a moment. The mansion was a dark shape in the distance, glowing faintly with golden lights. My chest tightened painfully. Part of me wished things had been different. That he had been different. That the bond pulling at my heart hadn't been tied to a man who saw me as nothing. But wishing was useless. I wiped my tears and forced myself up, turning my back on everything I had known these past weeks. I was on the run, pregnant, alone, and scared. But for the first time since this stupid situation happened to me, I felt free. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or if I'd even live to see it. But one thing was certain. I would rather die in the desert than live as his prisoner.
Chapter 5. The Hunt Begins. Jackson's POV. The night air was sharp with the scent of desert sage and engine oil. I stood on the balcony, staring out at the moonlit sand dunes stretching beyond the gates. My fists clenched tight at my sides, knuckles white under my skin. She was gone. Blaze stood behind me, silent as always, but even without looking, I could feel the tension rolling off him. The others waited near the gates, shifting uneasily in the cold breeze, their breath misting under the full moon. "Tell me exactly how it happened," I growled, my voice low and vibrating with fury. Blaze cleared his throat. "She packed light. No one saw her leave. She picked the lock at the west gate. Left no trail." "No trail." I turned on him sharply, my amber eyes narrowing. "She's human. She bleeds and sweats like the rest of them. Her scent must be everywhere." Blaze lowered his head in submission. Yes, Alpha. I turned away, breathing hard. My wolf snarled beneath my skin, restless and furious. Every part of me burned with anger. How dare she run? After everything I gave her, safety, shelter, protection. Did she think the world outside these walls would be kinder to her? Felix stepped forward, his silver wolf ring catching the moonlight. She won't survive out there, he said with a smirk. The desert will finish what you started. I shot him a glare that shut him up instantly. I didn't start anything. She chose this. Behind Felix, Mara stood silently, her eyes soft with worry. Brother. Maybe she left because she was scared. I stiffened. Scared? Of what? I gave her everything she needed. She's pregnant, Mara said quietly. Alone. Confused. You never spoke to her. You never made her feel safe. My jaw ticked as I fought back the urge to snarl at her. Deep down, her words cut through my anger like a blade. She was right. I had kept my distance. I thought it was better that way. Easier. But each time I saw Reese, something in me shifted. The way she held her chin high even when her eyes filled with tears. The way her scent calmed my wolf, wrapping around me like the warm desert wind at dawn. I hated it. Craved it. I hated that I craved her. Blaze stepped forward again, his golden eyes glowing faintly. What are your orders, Alpha? I clenched my fists tighter. The thought of another man finding her, touching her, hurtling her and the baby, my baby, made my vision go dark with rage. Find her, I growled. Search every inch of this desert. Tear down every settlement, every roadhouse, every town until you bring her back. Blaze nodded. Alive! My eyes snapped to his. Alive and unharmed. He dipped his head and left without another word, rallying the hunters into formation. Their motorcycles roared to life one by one, the sound vibrating through the ground like a promise of violence. I turned back to the balcony, staring out into the darkness. The cold wind tugged at my shirt, lifting strands of my hair. She thought she could leave me. She thought she could take my child with her into that wasteland and disappear forever. She was wrong. Behind me, Felix spoke again, his voice careful. Some of the men are questioning your decision, Alpha. Questioning what? Your obsession with a human, he said softly. They wonder if she is worth this risk. I turned slowly, my eyes glowing bright amber in the dark. She carries my air, my blood, my legacy. Felix swallowed, lowering his gaze. Of course, Alpha. I stepped closer to him, my boots echoing against the stone floor. Anyone who questions me again will find themselves on the other side of these gates. Permanently. Yes, Alpha, he whispered, bowing deeply. I walked past him, down the corridor to my office. The fire burned low in the stone hearth, casting flickering shadows across the room. I sat behind my desk, the leather creaking under my weight, and buried my face in my hands. Why did she run from me? The question haunted me, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I had never cared before. Women came and went, none leaving a mark deeper than a scratch. But Reese, she left something else entirely. A wound that refused to heal. My wolf paced inside me, restless and furious. She was mine. A soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. Mara stepped in, holding a small piece of fabric in her hand. She walked to my desk and placed it before me. I picked it up. It was torn from a hoodie, black and smelling faintly of grease, metal, and her. My chest tightened painfully. We found this near the South Dunes, she said softly. She's heading toward the old highway. I stood quickly, clutching the fabric tight in my fist. My heart thundered with relief and rage all at once. Mara, I said, my voice low and calm despite the storm raging inside me. Yes, brother. Tell Blaze I want her back by sunrise. Mara hesitated, worry flickering in her eyes. And if she refuses to come willingly? I looked at her, my gaze cold and final. Then she will learn that running from an alpha has consequences. She bowed her head and left the room. I held the torn fabric to my nose, breathing in her scent. My wolf calmed slightly, soothed by the reminder that she was still within reach. You're mine, Reese. I set my jaw, my eyes narrowing as I stared out into the dark desert beyond the windows. And I will hunt you to the ends of this earth if I have to.